When I first started podcasting, I made the same mistake most people do. I thought the key was to sound professional, so I copied what I've heard before, the tone, the pacing, the little pauses that weren't really mine. And for a while it worked. It sounded like every other decent podcast host. But that was the exact problem. Because here's what I've eventually learned. The shows that grow, the ones that really connect, aren't the ones that sound perfect. They're the ones that sound alive. You can have the best mic in the world, a studio full of gear, and still lose people if they don't feel you. When you try to sound like Joe Rogan or any other big name, you stop sounding like yourself. And when you lose that, you lose everything that makes your show worth listening to. So, in this video, I want to help you return to something simple but powerful. Your voice. Not your broadcasting voice, not your I'm on camera voice, but the voice that shows up when you forget to perform. Because that's where your connection lives. That's what people remember. Not how polished you sound, but how real you feel. So let's get into it. What's the common problem? Most podcasts don't fail because of bad sound, they fail because they don't know who they are. You'd be surprised how many hosts can't clearly answer one question. Why does your podcast exist? If you can't say it in one sentence, neither can your audience. So without that clarity, your show becomes noise. Another voice in the endless scroll of podcasts. It might be interesting for a moment, but it doesn't really stick. And in podcasting, the shows that stick are the ones that know what they stand for. You can feel it in the first 10 seconds. There's a purpose in the rhythm, direction in the tone, and confidence in the silence. It's not about sounding like an expert, it's about sounding anchored in some sort of way. Like you know what this show means to you and why you're doing it. When you build from that place, everything else, your format, your guests, your growth, starts to align naturally. But without it, you're just guessing. And guessing burns energy fast. Trust me on that one. Why most podcasts fail on concept. So let's slow down and take a look at this clearly. Why do so many talented hosts struggle to create something that really lasts? Reason number one, no clear mission. They start recording before they found their compass. They have passion, sure, but no direction. Every episode drifts towards whatever feels interesting that week. And the result is a podcast that never really lands. And reason number two, trying to please everyone. You see what's trending, you tweak your tone to fit it, and you imitate what's working for others. And before you know it, you kind of lost your own center. You lost your way in this podcast. When you try to appeal with everyone, you connect deeply with no one. Reason three, relying on personality alone. Charisma can grab attention, but it can't hold without identity. People don't follow you because you sound confident. They follow you because you stand for something. And the funny thing is, you can't fake that. Audiences are sharp. They can sense when you're speaking from script or from truth. So before you hit record again, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, if I stripped away everything, the guests, the format, the music, what's left? What do I want people to feel when they listen? That clarity isn't a nice to have. It's the foundation of your creative identity. It's what turns a podcast from a project into a platform. Find your unique angle. So how do you actually stand out? Not by being louder, but by being clearer. It starts with two simple but really powerful tools. Your podcast one-liner and your SAG statement. Your one-liner is your show's heartbeat. It's the single line that tells people exactly what you do and why it matters. It should be so clear that someone could repeat it after hearing it once. For example, the show where your audience learn to result or transformation. For example, the show where creators master podcasting as a growth vehicle. That's your anchor. But it's not enough to be clear, you also need to be different. And that's where your SAG statement comes in. It's about defining your contrast, your lane, your onlyness. Our podcast is the only type of show that unique, benefit, or focus. When everyone sings, you need to sag. That's not about being rebellious, it's about being true. So try and ask yourself, what do I believe that the most people in my space ignore? What truth do I stand for even if it's not popular? What emotional tone defines my show? Calm, curious, challenging, or intimate? And who am I when the mic is on? The student, the guide, the friend, or the mirror? And when you can answer those questions honestly, your podcast stops being content and starts being communication. Your one-liner tells the world what your show is, your SAG tells them why it matters, and together they make you unforgettable. How to create recognition in 10 seconds. Once you know what your show stands for, you can start shaping how it feels. Because when people scroll through podcasts, they don't decide with logic, they decide with emotion. They listen for something they recognize, something that feels like home. So how do you create that instant recognition that, this is a show moment? 3 things. First off, sound signature. Your intro, your music, even the silence before you speak, it all creates atmosphere. You don't need a flashy sound, you need a consistent one. Something that matches the energy of your show. 2, voice energy. Every host carries a frequency. Maybe yours is calm and grounded. Maybe it's bright and warm. Maybe it's curious, reflective, slow. That's kind of what I do with my podcast. Whether it is, own it. Repetition builds identity. 3, thematic gravity. Every episode should orbit the same core message. You can explore new ideas, but your North Star stays steady. That's what gives listeners a sense of belonging. When your voice, tone, and theme align, your podcast becomes something people feel before they even hit play. And that's how you stand out. Not by shouting louder, but by sounding like yourself consistently. My story. When I first started my own podcast, the landscape already felt overcrowded. There were hundreds of voices all fighting for the same attention. And if I was honest, I didn't really know what made me different. I just knew I didn't want to disappear in the noise. So one night I picked up Martin Neumeyer's Sag, a brilliant book, and there was a line in that book that hit me like a mirror. When everyone's 6, you need to sag. I wrote down 6 questions from the book and I answered them one by one. What is my product? A premium cinematic podcast that feels intentional? How will I deliver it differently? With calm presence and honesty. And who is the podcast for? People seeking genuine inspiration, not just noise. And where will it live? In Denmark, grounded in Scandinavian simplicity. And why does it matter? Because people are starving for depth in a shallow world. And when is it relevant? Now, when everything feels fast, distracted, and loud. By the time I finished, I realized something simple but really powerful. No one else was combining those exact ingredients. And that became my identity, my sag for my podcast. From that day, everything became easier. Choosing guests, finding topics, designing visuals, even speaking. Because once you know what makes you the only one, you stop competing and you start creating. So here's your challenge. Now it's your turn. Take 15 minutes today to write your own sag statement. My podcast is the only type of show that unique benefit. And then after that, you need to write your podcast one-liner. And when you got both, share them inside this Skool community. And then you'll get some reflections from me or maybe some of the other people in the community. Because clarity doesn't happen alone, it happens in conversation. But don't rush it. This exercise isn't about branding. It's about understanding yourself. It's about putting language to your intuition, so your audience can feel what you already know inside. Below this course, I've added the SAG and one-liner custom GPT that will help you find your podcast uniqueness and direction. So let's summarize. You started this module wondering how to make your podcast stand out. Now you know. It's not about being louder, faster, or more polished. It's about being more you. When everyone else is trying to sound like Joe Rogan, you'll be the one who sounds like yourself. That's your advantage. And that's what cuts through, because the world doesn't need another podcast that sounds perfect. It needs one that sounds alive, one that feels like someone is telling the truth, and that someone is you.